Hey, this is home game. Let's do something a little different. So, over on Reddit, someone who is obviously frustrated with his gaming group decided to post his 44 rules for his D&D night. These look like, um, after reading through this, now let me just start by saying I've seen a number of people on YouTube make video responses to this, and they're mostly positive. I thought this would be a nice challenge for me to go through this and pull the positive from it and really also examine what this group must be going through. Um, because obviously, one person is very frustrated and he might just have different goals than the rest of the people who are playing or different expectations. So that's probably a conversation he needs to have with them. But it seems like his frustration peaked, and he came up with these 44 rules for D&D. I will try to personally edit out saying like the words are obviously on the screen. I just copied this over, but I don't try to use excessive profanity too much. So here we go. Uh, I'm timing turns, and I don't give an F if it's unfair in your opinion because your spells are hard or you don't know what square to move to. You get 1 minute to know all the actions you want to take, or I skip your turn. So, like, the underlying intention here, I don't think is terrible. If a lot of people are taking excessive time to take their turn just because they're not paying attention, I mean that's a fair response. Um, but you can just say, "Hey guys, can you please make your decisions or pay attention in between your turns to figure out well, what you'd like to do?" And if you're paying attention, usually the person before you doesn't royally, screw over your idea. So if you're paying attention, you can keep up with this, and your turns don't take forever. Um, so obviously, what this person probably has is people who aren't paying attention to the game in between their turns. So it comes to their turn, and then they're like, "What did you do? What did you do?" And uh, can I move this far? It's probably a mix of a number of things, but also uh, if they're newer, maybe they just don't understand a lot of things, so they have 100 questions, and that would be fine. So it would probably be better to see something like, "Hey guys, can you please pay attention in between your turns and think of what you want to do in between your turns because we don't have all day." You know what I mean? And we're all here to play a game, so respect each other and pay attention. Number two rule: if you want harder fights, bring a second character sheet and expect to twiddle your thumbs when you die. I'm not going to baby anyone. All right. So, I mean, if they're saying they want harder fights, man, I guess give them harder fights. But that's about setting your expectations. If they expect really hard fights and they don't care if their character dies because maybe they're not worried about building a backstory with this hugely dramatic backstory or in-depth backstory. Maybe they just want to make a bunch of meat puppets who come out and hit things. But that's a conversation you need to have with your players, you know. But if encouraging them to bring a backup character is perfectly fine, as long as you're not saying, "Hey, I'm going to kill you guys every week just because I can, and I find that fun, and I don't care if you're having fun." If the player's expectations is super hard fights and they need to have backup characters, I think that's perfectly fine. That's an acceptable expectation. If you call me or my role's unfair, I'll get up and go home. And if you got to ride with me, you can find your own way back and suck it up. If your players are telling you you're cheating and you're losing trust in your group, I guess that's something you should address. I don't know if this is the proper way to address it. But maybe this is the only group this guy can find, and they they've caught him in a lie or two or something, and now they just don't trust anything he says. Um, but if they were running into just some hard monsters, and now they're calling his rolls unfair, then we're kind of not going to be able to meet expectation 2 here on the list, right? Because their monsters are just hard and the rolls come out high and it's a tough fight for you, then why would they be asking for harder fights? You know, yeah, I guess this is back. Like I said, this is back to trust. You need to trust your players that they're not going to cheat you, and you need to not cheat your players. So if they don't trust you, then you got to figure out a way to earn that back. Number 4, I'm going to take my character's loot, or I'm going to take your character's loot away as regularly as you want it given out. Rule 3 applies here. I mean, I guess that depends on what you mean. I can't outright say one way or the other, really. There are perfectly legitimate reasons to attack players' loot. Uh, but I don't understand. Maybe his players are asking for like a ton of magical stuff or something, and he's like, "Yeah, sure. If it makes you happy, you can have a ton of magical stuff, but you know, every 4 sessions, you're also going to get robbed at knife point in the middle of the night." You know what I mean? I mean, if you're dealing out 20 magic items a month and you can't deal with the power, the power ramp because of that, that's a real problem. I don't know if that's what he's talking about. The players just constantly want magical loot or something, and he's like, "Yeah, you can't have it if I do give you the boots of a Chardalon stride or whatever. Then I gotta steal something back from you in order to keep my game balanced." Um, I get like I said before, it's setting expectations. Just tell the players, "Hey, there's not a lot of magical stuff. I can't give you a ton of stuff because it would make you too powerful and the game would just be broken." Number 5, if you don't act out any of your persuasion or intimidation or any other social checks, you fail before you even roll. You fail immediately because you aren't even trying and you're making the game lame for everyone else. Hmm. But you only get 1 minute. Rule 1 is he's timing his turns. You get 1 minute. Unless he's talking out of combat. Like if you're doing persuasion or intimidation checks out of combat, you get longer than a minute. Hmm. I mean, either way, like if I think that you should always pursue more character driven things, like actually thinking of what you would say for your persuasion or what you would say and or do for your intimidation. But I mean, for some people, it's harder than others, And if your character has a plus 14 on intimidation or plus 14 on persuasion, you personally shouldn't have to mirror that level of skill if you don't in real life have it. Uh, so the intent behind it is okay to say, hey, you should be pursuing better RP by actually telling me what you would say in these or do in these situations instead of just saying I want to make a persuasion or intimidation roll. But I mean, if that's the way your group runs too, I mean that would also be fine if that's the way you want to do it. The way we try to run our group is you say what you're doing, and then we tell you if you have to roll for it and what that roll would be. But if your group is perfectly happy together sitting down and saying, I want to do an intimidation check, I mean, there's no wrong way to play if everyone's having fun. Doesn't seem like this guy's having fun, but so yeah, the intent behind it I think is fine. I think the way it's worded, like everything on this list, is a little harsh, but this guy was obviously at his breaking point when he wrote it, or woman. I don't know if it was a man or a woman who wrote this. If you don't pick up on cues for side quests, that's not my problem. Is number 6. If you don't pick up on cues for side quests, that's not my problem. Get over yourself. It's not a video game. It's a role-playing, pen and paper-based game with miniatures. I'm not holding your hand if you choose not to pursue things. Cues are real hard for players to pick up on. Like, I've practically driven over players with a dump truck full of cues or clues or hints or tips, or and it's like if I throw one red herring in the middle of a barrel of clues, they grab the red herring and run with it. Like um yeah, I I would say keep slapping them in the face with the clues is what I would say, or just be direct. Just say, hey guys, I've tried real hard to be subtle for 3 sessions, but this is where the game goes. These are, and then you can even explain to them. These are the 15 things that I did to attempt to steer you in that direction. This is how I'm trying to do it. So, and then maybe your players would even pick up on it a little bit more often from then on and be like, oh, this is, he doesn't just make up flyers on the bulletin board outside the tavern just for fun. These flyers have missions for us that we can go on to get loot. You know, and if you're just not experienced in that respect, maybe they're just missing it. You know, maybe a fully invested player could still miss that stuff. So again, communication. Talk to your players about how you drop the hints that you thought that they would pick up on, and say, "Hey, this is how I'm trying to drop my hints." So when you see something like that, it means I'm trying to steer you in a direction that I think is beneficial to the story. If you move to a square in combat, there's no takebacks. All right. I mean, if that's what you're gonna play. That's fine. Um, Now, I would just argue that if there's new information that wasn't presented or presented clearly, or the player didn't catch up, pick up on, that should be a conversation. But if all they're doing is dancing around with their token because they're not paying attention in between turns, and they're like, oh, I'll move here and I'll move there and I'll move there, and it takes 15 minutes to move your token 6 spaces, I guess that's a conversation to have with them. But I mean, it's not like even chess lets you take your hand off of it before they call it permanent. You know what I mean? So if you scoot it up 3 spaces and your hand's still on it, that you're not allowed to move it. It's more movement to move it from there. Um, I mean, you got to have your standards and your processes for your own games, I guess. Number 8, you tell every single person that you're what you're doing before you do it. You don't effing roll dice and then say you're casting fireball. You tell us all. All right. This comes with respect around the table. Like, I don't disagree with this sentiment at all. Um, because you might not even be able to cast it. You might just be wasting people's time. Like, if you're like, I'm casting fire spell and someone goes counter spell, then you're not casting fireball anymore. So why bother? But I have definitely had instances where everybody at the table is just talking and I'm trying to, and it's my turn, and I'm trying to get something done, and I just roll all of my dice while I'm waiting for everybody to stop talking. And when they ask, I'm like, "Yeah, I did this thing. Here's my dice. Uh, does a 17 hit? If so, then I did 14 damage." I mean, I've definitely done that myself. If everybody at the table's nice and calm and letting you take your turn, and nobody's interrupting, and nobody's talking about Game of Thrones episode that aired last night while you're trying to take your turn, this is absolutely fine. You shouldn't be just you definitely shouldn't be able to sit there, roll your dice over and over again, and then say I'm casting fireball. But if all you did was it's your turn, but nobody's gonna be quiet long enough for you to even state your intent, and you just throw all your dice in a thing, you're like, "Yeah, I was casting fireball. Here's all my dice." I don't see much of an issue with that, but um, like I said, ideally, yeah, you're declaring your action, and then you're rolling for your action when the DM asks you to. Number 9, I will give out exhaustion more frequently. If you argue, go home, or you can actually fight me over it, or you can DM yourself. You should encourage people to DM. We don't have enough DMs. I I don't know why he would give out exhaustion more frequently. Are his people just never resting? Because that's fair. If you never, you got to set up your watches at night and rest, or you start taking exhaustion. That's how it works. You can actually fight me is a little overboard. um, but the two sentiments that are in there, hey guys, you got to rest or you get exhausted, and you can DM yourself. You definitely can DM yourself. I know this is said as like a threat almost, but you shouldn't encourage people to DM. Encourage them more gently though. Nudge them into it. Number 10, every snide comment you make to an NPC will be remembered and paid back in triplicate. You all seem to believe there is little consequence. Yeah, I mean, if you're mean to all the NPCs, they might rally against you eventually. You don't be mean to the every 10-year-old child you see in the game just because you know they can't kill you. Number 11, you will not be given a mega dungeon every session. A temple is not the size of a small city. Neither is a cave. These things will happen when it's natural and organic. Go play some roguelike if you want that. I don't know what roguelike is. Who would want a mega dungeon every session? Mega dungeons are just slogs. Like, I've never gone through like a full mega dungeon. I'd like to just to say I did it once, but it gets super monotonous. Like it's just room after room. I don't know why you would think that every game's going to be a mega dungeon. A nice small 5-room temple is perfectly fine. I mean, it's great. Things should happen naturally or organically in your game. We'll just have a mega dungeon after mega dungeon right after the other one. How could you have a mega dungeon every session? Unless you just win one mega dungeon for a year. I mean, if you're playing Dungeon of the Mad Mage or something, then yeah, you're gonna have 15 levels of mega dungeon. But this goes right back to setting expectations. Do your characters just want to live in a dungeon their entire life and just kill goblins and until they dig deep enough to find Asmodeus and Tiamat and kill them too? I mean, if that's what they want to do, then talk about it. 12. The travel portion is done. You want to travel continents doing literally whatever you want, whenever you want. Go play World of Warcraft or play D&D with AI. So these guys just like like hitting up every city and town, and the DM seems to want to actually create a problem in a specific area, maybe. I ran a homebrew campaign where the players were like months away from their objective, and it was like I liked it because it felt like an episodic, um like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or Angel, or like Full House, or whatever you want to call it. It felt like an episodic thing. Every week we would run into a new problem. There was an overarching plot, but they would go through multiple towns that had their own little problems that they had to help them with, and I really liked that. And I was running it with a bunch of people who were really new to D&D. We were playing 3.5, and they all seemed to like it too. So I mean, that's definitely a way you can play if you want to go all over the place. Um, but that's how the traveling in between those towns, I could kind of fast forward through a little bit, like that we would have it. But if nothing's happening during a 3-day walk, then you don't roll checks all day and have 3 sessions for your 3-day walk. You know what I mean? You fast forward through it to get to the action. So you can have campaigns where there's a lot of travel, where there's not a lot of downtime or boredom, and definitely make that work. Um, but this guy looks like he wants to park it in an area and solve a problem, and that's also fine. So um, set the expectations with your players. That's what he's doing here, but he's doing it in a pretty confrontational way. Number 13, if you're late with no good reason, I'm going to have your character's hit points for the entire session. No. If you have a player that's perpetually late, talk to that player. You can be more flexible with the player coming in. You can hold on to character sheets and have another player run that player or you can run that player until they get there. Having their hit points for the session, who does that help? I mean, it. Only thing you're going to do is frustrate the player, and you're going to cripple the team from being able to accomplish your objective. I don't agree with this. Sit down and talk to your players, man. Item 14, if you don't show up for no good reason, and that will be determined by me alone. If no one else has the guts to say anything for fear of upsetting one another, the first time you'll find yourself losing either a whole level or up to 3 major items of your own. The second time you do it in a row, you'll be removed from the chat and the group. Full stop. I have no effing time for people to not show up. Okay. Sly Flourish has something he's talking about right now. He's made a couple of videos recently about it, where he says, you have. I'm going to try to get this right. You have 2 players on standby who can't be there all the time, but they're willing to jump in when you need them. Often, you have one when you need someone, you call one of them. If that one says no, you call the other one, and they enter this contract with that exact understanding. So they know they don't have time. They can't commit to showing up every week, but they still want to play once in a while. If you call them, they might free up that day for you. Other than that, you have five consistent people. I think I don't know, it's 4 or 5 plus 2 is what he calls it. So you got 4 or 5 people you can count on. And then you have 2 people who are kind of on standby. And I think he says he'll play with 3. So if you have 5 people with 2 on standby, then you have to have 5 people tell you no before you have to cancel a game. And that's a pretty solid, like, that's a pretty catastrophic failure, or like you're just not meant to play at that point if you got 5 people who can't make your game. So if you're crippling your players, they're not going to be having as much fun. You need to find a workaround for, and I don't know what these players' schedules even is. Like I said, I get the impression that they're either older high school kids or younger college kids. So their schedule might be a little out of whack. I mean, and that's what's making it hard for them to make it to sessions. I mean, I'm rushing to get to my weekly session on Mondays sometimes because after work I have to do several things and then make it to my desk by 7 o'clock. I get it. The DM needs to be more flexible in this situation, I think, or try to develop a system that is more sturdy when it comes to their players showing up. Number 15, if you get too stoned or drunk to play, and now we're getting at the crux of this problem. So they must be like college level, or just or they're getting their substances from from someone who is. I will go home without a warning. Your warning is here. Absolutely. I don't. I would also be very stern about this because this goes back to the last 14 things that he said, where the players obviously aren't giving it the attention the DM is attempting to give it, or giving it the attention the DM expects out of respect. And I don't know if this is an issue with one person or 4 people who are doing this. If it's one person, you pull that person aside and you be pretty harsh with them about that. But if it's everyone, I mean, I guess it's time to dissolve your gaming group, because you don't have a gaming group, you have a drinking club. Which, if you want to be in a drinking club, I mean, I don't condone over excessive alcohol anymore. I'm an adult. I drink occasionally. But if you're showing up to roll a bunch of math rocks and do some elementary school level math and you're too drunk to do that, then I guess you can't play the game. Like I said, you don't have a gaming club anymore. Item 16, if you get up for bong or smoke or whatever breaks every 10 minutes, I will simply pack up and go home. I'm sick of waiting for every bloke to be at the table. Yes. Like I said, if they're drinking and smoking all day, you don't have a gaming club anymore. You have a substance abuse club. So, and if you don't want to be in this situation, you should definitely get up and leave and try to find a gaming club to be a member of. 17, guidance, divination spells, owls, and whatever spells I decide are too effing stupid are banned outright. No more effing guidance. I would encourage the DM to explore avenues for accounting for these things. I don't ban things quickly though, so if it's in the book, it's fair play for me. My personal preference has always been and will continue to be, I prefer only the 3 core books. But people have spent a lot of money buying books at this point for 5th edition. So it's either, like, the only thing that I feel safe saying is, hey, don't use things out of Ravenloft or Van Richten's Guide. We're not playing a horror setting. Please just don't use it. If we go to Ravenloft, go ham. Use all of it. Strixhaven, like you might say, hey, Strixhaven isn't really a thing in my world. Please don't use a Strixhaven book. Of course, if you're using D&D Beyond, it makes it hard to do that. Hard to limit the book selections easily to where it's not showing up. I'm not trying to make this video take a half an hour. Let me try to go a little bit faster. As soon as you start aggressively limiting things, I think you should find a different. You should just find a different game to play. I mean, because obviously D&D isn't the game that you want to play if you're going to start limiting everything. But then again, if you talk to your players and you all agree to it, then that's fine. It's your game. Dude, you can do whatever you want. Number 18, you get one chance at a skill check. If you F up, your party doesn't get their chance to do the same skill check. Think carefully who's good at what. I mean, it's funny when the barbarian thinks he can do something that he can't. I don't know. I would say that you don't want to tell one player to give you a perception check, then everybody has to give you a perception check. I mean, either ask the whole group or you say no, that was your chance, and he failed. But then again, if that perception check is super important, then he shouldn't be able to fail it. Or they shouldn't be able to fail it. I don't want to gender every PC as a man. So think of failure with consequences in that aspect. So it's like, yes, they rolled so low that they normally would have failed. They're going to succeed. It's like say they're in a library and they're trying to study something, right? So they do their search check or their knowledge arcana check or whatever you want to call it to find this ancient arcane information that can only be found in this one section inside of Candlekeep, in this back corner or behind a secret door that you have to get into. Allow them to find the information. If they roll a 1 or a 2 on their search, still allow them to find it, but then say someone spotted them doing it and they reported it to the librarians or whatever, and now they're super suspicious of your character and they're following you around real closely. And when you go to leave, you're met by 3 armed guards who want to detain you and question you now over this forbidden knowledge that you just dug into in the library. So yeah, they failed their check, but they still got what they needed, but with consequences. So look into more stuff like that if this is happening. Number 19, discussion of metagame details in-game will result in instant damage to your character. Some meta aspects are built into the game, but I mean, if your players know Asmodeus, I keep jumping back to Asmodeus. If players know Asmodeus is a big part of your campaign, and their response is to hit the internet to do all the research on Asmodeus and bring in real life knowledge that their character wouldn't know to make their decisions, you can set your game up like that, definitely, and encourage them to research the lore of D&D. That'd be a good way to get your players reading. But then again, that has to be the expectation, or you're seriously metagaming. And that's not cool for you trying to gradually set up your plot and do reveals and stuff like that. Delivering damage to your character, maybe if they continually do it, maybe you just talk to that player. Don't attack their character. Like I said, that hurts the whole team. Talk to the player and say, hey, what you're doing is this. It's not cool. So please stop doing it, or I'm going to have to ask you to just not come back. Number 20, rules lawyering fellow players encouraged. Actually me will result in me telling you to F off. In my games, I think we have a pretty open dialogue about this stuff. So I don't know all the rules on games that I DM. I rely on my players to come back and say, hey, it actually works that way. And a lot of times I'll just say, okay, yeah, it works that way. Sometimes they'll say, hey, I want to do it like this. Or two people will say, I think it works like this, I think it works like that. And I just make a decision and say, you know what? This is how we're going to do it this time. And at the end of the session, we'll talk about it. Or we can talk about it in our chat throughout the week. Hey, we looked this up. This is actually how this is supposed to work. And next time we'll do it right. I mean, it's not a huge deal. You should be having conversations with your players. It shouldn't be this confrontational, trying to figure out a rule. 21. You roll your dice within view of two players who aren't you standard. You roll them neatly and you roll them on the table. Failing to do these three things will autofill whatever roll you did. Arguing that you actually rolled validly when you clearly didn't is an automatic critical fail. Alright. I guess his players are throwing dice across the table. Tossing them across the floor and calling it. Yeah, I mean, be polite. Roll your dice. He must think his players are cheating if they have to be rolled within view of two players, or that's their way of saying roll them in the center of the table in such a way that even two other people can see them. But I think he thinks some of his players are just cheating. Instant death, number 22. Instant death traps and mechanics are coming into place. If you call these things unfair moving forward, I will laugh at you and tell you to F off and cry some more. I mean, is he running through 2 and 4s? If that's the case, he really hates his players. But okay, if that's the way you guys like to play. I mean, obviously the players don't like it. Instant death traps are kind of not the most fun all the time. I mean, unless that's your expectation. Number 23, I will not give you random magical items and vendors will not stock them. They are meant to be rare and hard to acquire. I think this goes back to his loot question. They just want a bunch of magical things. That's perfectly fine. I mean, you don't have to have a magic shop around every corner for sure. I always like that. I like to think that magical items need to have a mini quest or something to get them because it makes them seem more. So, I mean, number 23 is a perfectly fine sentiment. Number 24, random encounters in the form of random dragons or strange, mysterious road trader or a band of goblin prostitutes isn't going to happen. Go play Baldur's Gate 3. I've watched some Let's Plays on Baldur's Gate 3. I've never played it. I mean, I didn't know those things happen in Baldur's Gate 3. Okay, I mean, drop that last bit, and that's the last bit's adding a little bit of sarcasm. But the first part of that's perfectly fine. You're not going to have, the random encounters are going to make sense if you have random encounters at all, I suppose. Number 25, I don't give two F's what Reddit said about X or Y ruling. Kind of same. I mean, Reddit can be helpful and not helpful. If taking in all the information is good, but I mean, ultimately it's a DM's discretion on confusing rules, I suppose. Number 26, I actually give less of an F about what your mates and group did. All right. Guess he doesn't care what other people are doing. 27. Saying anything to me about other players not liking me doing X or Y without them saying it directly to me will result in me kicking you out of the group. Don't use someone else to push your own agenda. These guys really need open dialogue. You shouldn't be afraid to say anything to the players in your group. There should be no repercussion to come out and have an honest conversation. But then again, I'm an adult who plays with adults, so maybe these are kids or people new to the hobby who are really having a rough go of it. Number 28, you're not to sit down and have a 2 hour discussion about what Samson from Bundora Secondary did 3 weeks ago when you come to play. Take the 15-20 minutes I use to set up and review my notes, talk to each other, then sit down to play. Samson from Bundora. Sorry, I really did not. Bundora is a suburb in Australia. So this is a group that plays in Australia. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fair. You have a set time to start playing, you should start playing. Now, when my game comes around, I usually let it go for a long time because I'm usually also setting up. Yeah, so the 15-20 minutes to set up is probably pretty close to accurate. Sometimes it goes longer than that, but as soon as as soon as the DM says, "Hey, type ready when you're ready," then the game starts. I mean, we all came to play. We got to respect each other's time. Saying things like, "Guys, come on, we're not here to have fun. We're here to play D&D. This is serious business," is rude and dismissive on how much work I put into this. I'll simply go home if I hear this. Yeah, I mean, if they're being continuously rude to you, you shouldn't stick around. Assuming that the way that's being said is, I assume there's some exchange before that where the DM's arguing with a player, and then someone says, "Hey, we're not here to have fun, guys. This is serious." Yeah, like I said, you guys need to hash this out and talk more. Number 30. Don't effing order food randomly. We will eat together at a specific time or not at all. I don't want food all over my things. Yeah, I don't want food all over my things either. You guys should set up a time to break and get food if you need to. Yeah, I mean, I don't typically participate in sessions longer than 4 or 5 hours anymore, and I can go 4 or 5 hours without eating. The most you need is drinks and maybe some small snacky type stuff that's not super messy. A sandwich is pretty clean most of the time. Uh, Number 31. No food or drinks near any of my D&D gear. If you wreck something, you can pay for it. I let one person trash my DM screen once and never had it replaced by them. In fact, I had that person attempt to gaslight me into believing they didn't wreck my things at all. I'm not stupid. You're an adult. Accept responsibility. Yeah, don't wreck people's stuff. That's why I don't typically loan out my stuff, and I play with adults. And for the last few years, we've played online, so I have all this stuff laying around that I'm just not even using. Yeah, if you break someone's stuff, you should replace it. That's how that works. 32. Arguments between party members outside of roleplay will be resolved by me giving the definite ruling. If you don't like it, F off back home. Yeah, DM's got to step in and moderate. I mean, if they're arguing over loot or something, DM should step in, create a system for distributing loot. Create some kind of point system where people can earn points to distribute loot. Let someone spend their added inspiration or something, and say he has inspiration, he can spend his inspiration to get first dibs on this thing. Um, Something like that. I've never play tested that. I just made it up on the spot, so I don't know if that will work or not. But a lot of groups develop some kind of point system. But our group, we just talk about it. We say, hey, which character would get the most use out of this item? 33. I don't give a F what he did in Critical Role, or what that one guy on Reddit said, or if you think that it's all make believe, so you can do what you want. The world I run works on internal rulings and lore I created specifically for it. Um, yeah, the DM is way more invested than his players are. I mean, that's what this comes down to. I also don't care a whole lot what they did on Critical Role. I've tried real hard to watch Critical Role, and there are aspects of Critical Role, like their story points. If they wrote a fantasy novel, I would buy it and read it. And I like I'm watching their animated show Ex Machina. I'm watching that, and I think it's pretty great. I just can't watch Critical Role, and they're all very intelligent people. Like I want to love that show, and I just can't devote the amount of time it would take for me to really pay attention to that show. Um, I mean, this guy doesn't seem to care about how anybody else runs D&D. So, um, I think the DM should care more about what other people are doing. Uh, but if all of his players are just throwing it in his face in an aggressive manner, then this is his response to it. He's going into fight or flight and comes out swinging. Item 34. Every single person in this chat is having debuffs applied to their characters. It should have occurred a long time ago. This will be specific to characters. This goes back to magic items and stuff. I think he let his characters he let his players build up, and now he's having trouble dealing with what he allowed his players to do. Which is a real easy trap to fall in. Like I don't fault him. Players are going to ask for a number of things, and you have to be able to say yes, but this is what you have to go through to get to that thing, or no, you can't have a sphere of annihilation on the end of a stick. You have to be able to be reasonable with your players. Number 35, if you don't bring your sheet, you don't play. Again, hold on to your character, hold on to your player sheets then. I said it earlier too. Because if you got people who are late or not coming all the time, you should just have a copy of their sheet anyway. Try to help your players have fun. So long as they're invested in the game, you should be trying to assist them in having their fun. Number 36, if you don't bring dice, borrow some. Yeah, man. I mean, I got 300 sets of dice laying around here. I got plenty of dice as a DM to loan people. Even if you don't love dice, if you're a DM, keep extra dice in your bag, man. I would have zero issue bringing in 4 brand new people who don't own dice and throwing loaner dice at them every game session until they go buy dice. That wouldn't bother me at all. In fact, I could give them a set of dice and it wouldn't hurt me in the slightest. I've got tons of extra dice laying around. I've got plenty of dice I have no need for that I don't have any particular attachment to. That if someone needed dice, they would just get a new set of dice for me. But yeah, bring your equipment, I guess. But I mean, like I said, I carry 5 extra sets of dice in my DM bag, so it wouldn't be an issue. Number 37, when we play D&D, I'm not your friend. That doesn't mean you treat me like an enemy during the game. It means I'm no longer being nice. That's a pretty combative DM or GM stance. We're all sitting at a table trying to tell a story. I mean, But if you wanted to be DM against players, you guys can definitely play like that. If you treat me poorly in any way, shape, or form after or during or before the game due to something that happened in the game, you're out. If you cannot separate a game from reality, I think you are an effing moron, and I have little time to deal with that energy. Yeah, treat people with respect, man. It's pretty simple. Number 39, you will submit your spell list daily in game. If you do not give a spell list for each game day, you will not be allowed to cast a single spell or cantrip in combat. I do not trust you guys. There it is. To not use this against me. He doesn't trust him. I mean, that's evident. Spell list, you should, if you have to prep spells during the day, you should prep your spells. When I was a wizard, I would just do little check boxes. Hey, this spell, this spell, this spell. I create a document to do it. Number 40, if you do not mark off spell slots or you say something like, I remember what I'm at, as a way to justify it, I'll simply fail your spell, deal damage to your health. He doesn't trust his players. You and say you have no spells to cast for the rest of the day. Little harsh, but I mean, if people are constantly abusing it, I get why he's frustrated. Number 41, if you break literally anything, you can buy the replacement that day or not attend till you do. Okay, so his players are breaking his stuff and he wants it replaced. If they're abusing that, then that's fair. Hey, you can come back when you bring me the replacement for the thing you broke. 42, if you complain about the choice of music, I fully expect you to bring the whole playlist next session or to shut the F up. I don't play music in my games, man. I find it distracting. Even when people play music, if we're online, I'll turn it down. I get it, but I've become super sensitive to overstimulation since COVID happened. Locking yourself in a quiet house for 2 years will do that, I suppose. I mean, if the music's screwing up the mood, then sure, you should probably talk about different music. If you're forcing them to listen to something they find frustrating for 4 hours at a time, then maybe they just stop coming back. 43, cannot stress enough how little I care about how you feel about my rulings from now on. Yeah, I think they've been doing a ton of arguing. That's what happened. This guy's super frustrated. But they should talk about it like adults and figure it out. Number 44, I'm never just threatening you, I'm promising you. Alright, I mean, I haven't said that since grade school, but... So, what do you think about the 44 rules? I'm sorry this video took an hour, it looks like. I tried to run through it as much as possible. So yeah, this guy's super frustrated. I hope that he sits down with his players and they figure this out, because this can be the most fun if you do it well. So, 44 rules for D&D. Are you guys going to adopt the 44 rules for D&D into your session? All seriousness, I hope this guy figures it out. I hope this person figures it out with his team or her team, and they learn how to have fun playing this game. Thanks for listening. If you stick in for the hour, I won't be offended if you crank this video up to 4 times speed. It was super long. If you stuck around to the end, thanks for listening. I'll try to keep it short next time.